What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team.
Dudes, we got Mr. Rob here. What's going on, brother?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Good. Sorry, we're experiencing technical difficulties. We had our first troll last week,
Oh, no way.
which I didn't even know that was a real thing. And I still don't even really know what the definition of a troll is. I now have a sense because the guys were telling me, and I was witnessing it in real time last week, somebody on Discord, and we couldn't tell if this guy was trolling or not, but he was just creating a lot of chaos. So anyway, Kyle put some boundaries, I guess, around the conversations in Discord. And as a result, now a lot of the guys, I've been trying to work it out the last 10, 15 minutes, a lot of the guys are having trouble getting the link to this on Discord. So and the guy it seemed like relatively upset for me for blocking him on our Discord channel. So he created, I think, two or three more usernames, and he came on and he thought I blocked him. I didn't. It was one of our other guys on here, and I think it was a good call. But now we have to have some sort of parameters around who has access, blah, 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 et cetera. So for anybody listening to this, I'm sorry if you had trouble getting the Discord link. We're actually going to start sending the link out as well through our newsletter email. So if you guys don't mind, go on the website, click the newsletter email, and that way I'll get your actual email, and we'll be able to send out the links through there. We will also be doing different meetings sometimes throughout the week. Like I have several guys reach out to me and saying, "Hey, I've got this topic I want to talk about. Do you have time to hop on?" So I'd like to include you guys in those discussions every once in a while if you want. Anyway, sorry, I'm still going over my cold as well. The other thing is, for the new guys here, if you want to come up, just raise your hand, let us know. I think you can do that through the Crowdcast app in some sort of way. And if you want to come up, I will invite you up. I will also randomly invite you guys up. Don't feel like you have to join, but we just really like the roundtable discussions here. And we've got Ray. Ray, I thought you weren't on here. I'm going to bring you up, buddy. Okay. So very interesting, at least very interesting topic to me today. Ray, how you feeling, brother?
I feel like hell, dude.
Oh, no. You're sick too?
Yeah, but that's all right. That's all right. It's I'm still here. I'm still standing. And,
yeah, I'm sorry, but
this thing comes for us all apparently this winter.
Yeah, apparently, dude. So we wanted to go around on this particular topic. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown, and I think, unfortunately, she doesn't reach a lot of people because, the content that she talks about, let's say, is stereotypically, geared towards females. At least that's the perception. But she gave this absolutely excellent talk on deconstructing trust. And I think as men, if we can do a better job of developing a vocabulary that is centered around emotion and operationalizing some of these words, then I think it can help us guys deal with females or deal with ourselves or deal with our friends. I think just oftentimes we literally lack the vocabulary or the thinking flow charts or the patterns to be able to navigate the emotional world. So let me pull this up. Let me see if I can actually find it. So she did this excellent breakdown of trust, and I believe it's called braving. Let me see where she turned it into an acronym. Braving acronym. Okay, so we're going to go through it. Okay, first thing that she said, so she broke down trust, and she is a bottom-up researcher. So she goes and actually studies the data, and then she deconstructs it, and then she teaches it. And I think she gave this as a speech on either a TED Talk or I think it was a Netflix special. Okay, so the B in braving is called boundaries. To trust someone, Brene Brown says, is essential that they were very clear about our boundaries so they can understand and respect our limits. It's also important that we understand the boundaries of others so we can trust, so the trust can flow both ways. Let's go quickly around here. Rob, what's your first at bat at the subcategory of trust, which is around boundaries?
I've noticed even from this men's group that boundaries is significantly more important than maybe that I thought. I think I do pretty good at setting boundaries naturally, so it's never really crossed my mind as much. But I hear a lot about people having their energy sucked from others.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, it's okay to say, hey, I can't, like, I'm busy, maybe next time, like I'd love to, but I'm emotionally drained. But I didn't realize how important it was. And now I think it's highly important. Like, people don't know how to set boundaries. Like, that's a very important thing because you'll be drained of your energy.
Yeah, Ray, do you have problems with setting boundaries or notice other people around you have problems with setting boundaries?
Dude, I'm the worst, man. I'm the worst. And like, I have trouble saying no. And then I get upset when like those volunteering duties interfere with my plans, right? It's crazy that literally the topic I was going to propose for today was boundaries.
Really?
Yes, I swear to God, it's nuts, man. It's like we're moon sisters or something, dude. It's crazy. But boundaries, I encounter a lot with the women in my life. I just volunteered to help someone like unload a truck today, even though like I would definitely like get them sick. So thank God I said I would have to wear a mask because I'm getting over a nasty bug, and that they said don't worry, next week. But with the female relationships in my life, like there's definitely boundary issues where there are about 6 women in my life, like that are in rotation for like Rob said, that are just like a time and energy suck, where it's like they don't have like a strong man in their life, be it a father or a boyfriend or husband. And so like, I find it falls to me to perform that role, whether they lean on me emotionally or lean on me to do chores. And like my mom is one of those people, and then other female friends of mine. Like I find, so boundaries are something that, like everything is a practice, as we know. And so boundaries are something that I have to like practice being good at.
Well, Rob, I think you're actually really good at this. What is literally the script of setting a boundary, as an example, so that you don't feel like you're like practicing like healthcare script, health class scripting where they tell you to blow the rape whistle, and you just feel like a nerd for saying, no, I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
So what are
the thing though is it's different depending on who's asking me for help. So like there are some people that if they ask for help, I have no boundaries with them. I'm there, no questions asked. So with other people, if I simply can't do something, I'll just tell them the truth. Like, hey, I just simply cannot. I also feel like honesty is just the best policy. It's easier to just let them know, like, hey, I'm feeling a little drained from the week. Can we reschedule this? If someone's like asking for my help and they're like in desperate need, depending on what it is and who it is, that has a big effect on what you're going to say, right? Mm-hmm. But I honestly think if you respect other people's boundaries, they'll respect yours. So if you don't overstep your bounds with them, then if you need something in return, they're going to I think it's a better way to do it is like respect their boundaries and they'll respect yours. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I have trouble as well. Just like Ray, it's like, I resent them for asking me to, like, I hate them for asking me to do it. And then they're going to hate me because I'm going to do it with a frown on my face. So like, I also need scripting around it. When I am successful at setting boundaries, Actually, my first boundary setting mechanism is I just ignore people. The next one is I try to use humor, like something like, hey, I really wish I could do that, but like you will hate me because I'm going to do a shit job because I'm going off of 3 hours sleep, or just like some sort of like thing to like take the edge off a little bit. But I would, if I were to accurately score myself, I'd say I'm probably a 6 out of 10 when it comes to.
What's an example when someone tried to test your boundaries, or you felt like, do you have one in top of your head, or Ray?
Well, I've got a great one, dude.
Yeah, please go ahead.
This is a multi-layer. This is like a wedding cake of boundaries. Okay. So my mom has a difficult tenant. This lady is going through a divorce, and she'll tell you this in every email. So she requires constant changes to the apartment she's renting from my mom. So my mom is like, I can't deal with this person anymore. You have to take care of this for me, please. So I'm like, okay. So this person texts or emails at least once a day, right? And so what is a landlord-tenant relationship? It is a business relationship, right? Different relationships require or have different communication conventions, right? And patterns. But like, I don't think a landlord and tenant is the kind of relationship that requires a daily text message or email or multiple text messages or emails. Like, I think there's a boundary issue there, right? And so now she proposed that, oh, why don't I leave my lease early, and then you'll be able to find someone and for a higher price. And so isn't that good for you, right? So, like this kind of language. And so I said, I think it's a great idea. And so I haven't read the email yet, but it's about a 5-page email that's waiting in my inbox. And so, like, in terms of boundaries and communication, Rob, what's your recommendation for how to, like, not get sucked into a writing an essay every time you have to communicate with a person?
So I think tonality makes a difference. So with an email, I don't think I would participate in that. I think I'd probably rather call them. And I think the tonality, I think what Wes said with humor and deflection is also great. But I think it just comes down to tonality. Like if they hear in your voice, like, he just can't, or they just can't, I think that makes a difference. But in that case, that's a business relationship. So that one is tougher. I mean, I think the reality is, hey, I got a busy week. There's a lot going on. Janice, we'll talk Saturday and we'll get to the bottom of everything. But until then, like, let's just take the time to figure out what you need of me, make a list, and then on Saturday I'll come and address the things that you need. But until then, I got to take care of some other things.
Yeah, and Wes, it's this person works in academia, not in business, and so you know how, like, so I think that kind of that informs my, like, unfortunately, that informs my attitude towards them in terms of that they'll take the time to write 5. Like there's no decision velocity necessary in this person's life, you know?
Yeah. So, and that's where I have the hardest time hurting female feelings. Like that is probably my kryptonite for sure.
Yeah.
Like no doubt about it. Cause being raised by a single mom in a very small apartment, I just got to see devastating events and not realizing that my mom's just highly emotional and that was, so I'm just naturally geared towards trying to avoid making people go through that. But from a business side, I have zero problem, right? Just like, because I think in a business transaction, laying out the functional geometry is just so obvious. It's like, hey, we're doing this as a consequence of doing business together. If it's not going to work, here's why, right? Because if I do this, if I set the price at this, then it's not going to work. And I made these mistakes, as Rob knows, in the past of setting prices too low, and then you have to go back and you have to have uncomfortable conversations. But for me, my kryptonite is having those awkward and uncomfortable conversations with females.
Yeah, I think
and my mom, my grandma, girlfriend, blah, blah, blah.
Well, if I think I can just keep it focused in it is a business relationship, the landlord and the tenant. And like, if she is to stay as a tenant, like the kind of demand she has would suck up all of the rental income with constant improvements, And so she is, yeah. So like, it's not workable, or like,
Exactly.
how am I supposed to feel? What am I supposed to do in this situation?
Oh, there you go. Never split the difference. Chris Voss, I love it.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
No, and Ray, in my personal view, that's why you take that 5-page email down to a 4-sentence email. Hey,
exactly.
Honestly, just being super candid with you, if we were to do all of these things, and then it would not be profitable for us, and therefore it would not be able to exist. It's not able to be sustained.
Yeah.
Straightforward. No problem. If that doesn't work for you, we totally get it. We can always, we can have you move out at a comfortable time for you within reason, and we can find another tenant, and you can find a cheaper place, right? Something along those lines. Phil, have you babyface Phil? What is up, brother? How Phil just got a
new leaf.
Have you had problems, or maybe been
look at that good? Look at that handsome
at setting boundaries?
Yeah, I don't know. My problem with boundaries are always like extreme. Like they're just like my problem with boundaries is people that don't have any interest in respecting boundaries. Like it's just always it's always to me like my family, and also like a couple of my friends are just like people who just if I mention something that bothers me, they'll just they might stop right now, but they're just going to keep doing it later. Nothing ever really changes. So that's with stuff like that. I don't really know what to do. Like I haven't talked to a friend of mine in a couple of weeks now, because I'm just like, I don't even know if I want to keep like hanging out with him, because he just does the same shit all the time. He just doesn't respect he just disrespects me in very basic ways that bother me. And like the last time, it's just been the same thing for years. It's just been the same thing for years, all over and over. And then every once in a while I'll say, we'll talk about it, and he'll be like sorry, and like whatever. And then like it just happens again in a couple of months. So it's like, what's the point? I don't really know. Like I don't want to like cut him out of my life. It seems insane to do that. I mean, it seems like I'm like, we're not dating, like what? He's just a guy that I like to hang out with, but then he's just an asshole in certain ways. And, I know I'm kind of an asshole too in ways. And I have tried pretty hard to stop doing things that I think bother him. And it's just like when I know it's just going to happen again, like what's the point? Like I get to the point where I'm like, what even is a boundary if it's just going to keep happening? If he clearly doesn't give a fuck to change anything in the long term. And that's the way my whole family is. My family's just like, if I point out something, they'll be like, okay, sorry about that. And then they don't care to think about it in the long term. They're just going to keep doing it.
Bless you.
Thank you. Well, I wonder, Phil, how much of it, because I think we all do this. By the way, you're really good at setting boundaries, because that troll who was on our Discord, I think you sent the message, shut the fuck up.
Dude, guys, I just got to say this to anyone who's involved in that listening. Stop feeding fucking obvious trolls. What the fuck was that, guys? That was like a day long taking a very obvious troll serious. It was very obvious within 5 messages, all right? It's so obvious when someone's trolling, because he's saying things that are completely incoherent, and he's jumping from either he has serious mental problems or he's a troll. He's most likely a troll. Stop fucking talking to him. Stop taking him seriously. That shit was pissing me off. I was like, what are you guys doing? Wasting your time with this person who's very obviously not sincere. We can't be doing that shit, guys.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
To be fair, completely my fault, because it felt to me like, let's say there was a 7% probability that it was some sort of mental illness or severe lack of social awareness, then I knew that the risk of me catering to that would be me looking naive and stupid, which I'll take every day of the week if it means that in that 5 to 7% probability that the guy's just having trouble communicating. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That if we can get through those, so I wanted to severely over-index. But then, eventually it started getting disrespectful to the guys, and that's just obviously unacceptable. And I think one guy who's on here now is the one who banned him, which I think was a really good call because I woke up the next morning and he was not there. So I appreciate the guy who took action on it once he decided that. So
we're protecting we're protecting the safety of his family and his identity by not mentioning him.
Yeah, he's a jacked. My hypothesis is he's a jacked OG of this team. Okay, so that sets the boundaries. Okay, so now moving on to the next letter of the acronym for Brene Brown. The next one is accountability. So again, when we're talking about trusting or not trusting, it's not a blanket statement. It's not, I trust you or don't trust you. It's like, well, how so? Maybe you don't trust that I set proper boundaries, or maybe I don't trust that you respect those boundaries. The next thing is, do I trust whether or not you can be accountable or I can be accountable? So it says we trust people who own their mistakes, apologize, and make amends. But others can only do that if we allow them. If we immediately write someone off when they make a mistake or stop talking to them, we don't give them the chance to step into their accountability. This goes both ways in a relationship. When we make mistakes, we need to let the other people know that we acknowledge the mistake and say sorry, and vice versa. So I'll pause there. Rob, what are your thoughts?
I think this one's big for relationships. Like if you swallow your pride and like genuinely apologize to someone, even if they maybe made a mistake, what I realized is that some people are just easier. It's easier for them to apologize. Like it's easy for me to apologize because I realize it makes everything better. But then I realized when I start to do it more, people reciprocate it and the relationship gets better over time. Like Corey is a perfect example of that for those who are aware. Like it's just not worth holding a grudge. And if you made a mistake because your limbic system or prefrontal cortex, as you always say, was just doing stupid things, like just own it and move on. It's not worth holding that, because then it's like a little interaction that someone you care about affects you for like 3 days, and it could have been addressed in like 30 seconds. And now your entire week is ruined.
Right. Do you have a one-liner that you use for apologies by any chance?
Well, a lot of times I'll just say, like you kind of do with the boundaries, like, yo, I'm an idiot. You know I'm stupid. You know I love you. Like that was just dumb, bro. Like I apologize. Or with a female, it's got to be a little bit different, obviously. But that being said, I'm quick to apologize because I don't want anyone to feel upset over something I did when I didn't even mean it. Because
that's pretty interesting.
Perfect.
I like what you're saying there. The speed helps as well. So not waiting 3 weeks to apologize, or sometimes 3 years, but doing it within 3 seconds. I have found a line to be really effective, which is, hey, I'm really sorry. I honestly messed up. I made a mistake. But I know if I were on the other side, if someone would do that to me, it'd feel horrible. Something along those lines. I also think there's a difference when you're keeping somebody else accountable or yourself accountable when violating someone. I think it's really important to look at the flow chart and define whether or not it was intentional. I think that is a massive, massive, massive distinction. And I'm a jerk when it comes to that. It's like, hold on, wait a second. Before we get to the apology level, right? Because some people, like you said, Rob, they have a really easy time apologizing. But it's like, I need to first define, were you intentionally trying to hurt me? Or was this just, some sort of flop? Because if you were intentionally trying to hurt me, there might be more consequences than just, you have to apologize.
And temporarily trying to hurt you?
What'd you say?
Temporarily trying to hurt you. They want to hurt you in that moment.
Thank you for that. That's actually a really good distinction. Because prior to that, I think I had more of like an absolute type of mindset, like binary, were you trying to hurt me, yes or no? But I think the temporary thing is pretty interesting. Ray, what are your thoughts?
All great things, guys. I'm just kind of like flooded with all the different beefs I have going on, and how much easier it would be if I had just been the first to apologize, Like, it's happened a couple of times more recently where I've gotten into like a three-way feud. And if I just apologize to all parties rather than trying to coordinate who should be apologizing first, if I just apologize, it usually ends the feud, and being hung up on this, like, I require justice before I can move forward. I mean, when you're dealing with human beings and the ones I'm related to anyway, you're never going to get that sense of justice. So I should seek just my own peace of mind, I guess, as the real prize, right? Rather than like keeping score of who owes me what apology. If I can just like focus on keeping a peace of mind so that I can really stick to my program and achieve what I want to achieve, I think that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, love it. Phil, what's your perspective, brother?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I really understand this stuff too much. I kind of wanted to read out someone in the chat. Kyle said, "My wife is the worst when admitting her fault. 95% of the time, she doesn't own up to her mistakes, which then causes a major fight. Versus when she owns up to her fault, we can move on instantly, and it's not a problem."
Let me pause you real quick, Phil. Kyle's new, so you might have to take it easy on him. And Kyle, just so you know, Phil is the most transparent man on this earth, which is why I love him. So, Phil, please proceed.
And
Sorry,
Kyle, like run for cover from your wife, dude.
All right. Well, see, Wes is kind of good about being nice about it, but Ray's just, another situation. So no, Kyle, I was just saying, I read that out because I have the same kind of problems, and I like sometimes, like my parents and my different people in my life, like that are like this, will admit fault if I like break them down, like if I really get into a giant argument, and I really hate, it's not fun doing that. It feels like I'm like harassing them almost by like getting into this huge argument and like questioning like whenever they say like like something that's obviously an excuse, like what do you mean by that, and like all the getting, it's like it's just it's not fun to do that, and I don't know. I always wonder like especially like with my parents, they're very like kind of always seriously like excessively guarding themselves in every way. Like they always lie is like a form of self-defense kind of, because they don't like to just be honest about uncomfortable stuff. And so there's like this bipolar quality to it. It's like I know that they know the truth, but they'll never say it unless I do that, like unless they like break down or whatever, we get into a huge fight. But like, so it's just, to me, I don't know, that always causes for me like just this huge compulsion in my brain about like honesty and trust, and like I think that's maybe partially why I'm kind of like a little bit pretty excessive with being straightforward, is because like I don't know, I have like a lot of compulsions about like being dishonest and stuff. Like for a long time I really didn't like even innuendo or even like sugarcoating things, because it just makes me feel like people, like we're not being honest, and it really drives me crazy because my parents are so dishonest all the time, I guess. I don't know what my freaking point is here, but I guess my point, what I wanted to say is like, for anyone, if anyone has any thoughts on this, like, is there a way to get to the truth without it being excruciating? Because I don't like beating people over the head with like, getting into these arguments and stuff, but like, also just I can't really deal with the dishonesty. It drives me insane,
Yeah, Ray, please go ahead, because I've got a really good antidote to this that's been helpful for me at least. So Ray, go ahead, brother.
I think something that's hard to practice, man, is like true serenity. True serenity is walking away from an argument when you know you're right. So they're shouting the wrong, and you just let them keep shouting it. and you just walk away. Wes, go ahead.
So I have found this particular tool to be really helpful. My girlfriend and I, we have arguments. Sometimes that takes a lot of time. So what we've implemented probably a few months ago, which has been really helpful ever since, is having an agreements list that we share through Apple Notes. And it's somewhat sacred in the sense that it's hard to penetrate to get into that list, if that makes sense. You don't want it to be 1,000 items, in other words. So it's like, okay, what are the pure agreements that we have that we're going to write down and that we're sharing with each other? It shouldn't be 25. It should be probably less than 10. So that way, and we have dates to them. So that way, if we're going to critique someone in a tough way and hold them accountable, the first thing that we're to ask ourselves is it on the list? And if it's not, then the first discussion is to be, hey, I was thinking about this. I was almost getting resentful, but I realized this thing that I would have been wanting, I didn't articulate to you. So can we have a conversation about putting this particular thing on the agreements list? Does that make sense? So she has a son and he plays basketball. Right now, it's not on the agreements list for me to attend a certain percentage of his basketball games. Let's assume that she wants me to do that. But rather than her getting level 10 mad at me if I don't go one of his basketball games, if that makes sense, her first conversation to me is, hey, I've now discovered it's really important for me to have you at those games a certain percentage of the time. Do you agree to that? And is it so important that we actually can put it on our list? Dude, that list, I'm convinced has saved our relationship. Because how often is it so easy for us to just bring up when we're upset some random thing? It's like, well, you said you would do this. It's like, yeah, I said that in 1985. A lot of shit has changed. I've also done a lot of other shit since now and then. So and by the way, so have you, So I noticed that we kept on getting in arguments around that. So I wonder if a tool like that could be implemented in a lot of guys' lives.
Super nice.
Dude, it's
there's just there's no resources for this for people. There's no resources.
Wait, what do you mean there's no resources? What do you mean?
This is a very helpful exercise, but there's no one to explain it to us or share it with us or post it. There's no how-to guide. Like he stumbled upon it, or I don't know how he figured it out, but I think that's great. Because then you can have a structure to any disagreement. There's a structure there. It's not going off a million different tangents. You can limit what you're arguing about.
Yeah. I think stuff like that is really great. I think stuff, I feel like Wes, you've said stuff like similar stuff to this a lot throughout the years of this thing, and I always think it's very interesting how resistant people are to stuff like this, because it's people will say it's unnatural, because it kind of sounds like you're signing like a business contract with your girlfriend or your spouse, and it is unnatural, but being natural sucks in a lot of ways, and that's the weird thing, that people are so resistant to that, and because when you were saying that, I was thinking I can't even imagine really doing that with a bunch of people that I'm in relationships with, like my parents or whatever, different people, it seems very alien, but it seems like it makes sense. So,
Yeah, to riff off what Phil just said, what can we do in a one-sided situation where having an agreements list with this person isn't realistic, and yet this person is gonna be in our lives, a kind of estranged parent or whatever kind of Phil is talking about. What can I do on my side of the street, so to speak, when it comes to kind of agreements?
Yeah. Well, first to Phil's point, and then I want to have Ben on because he said he wants to talk about one of our past points. The first thing is I love watching either evolutionary history or some sort of planet documentaries, if that makes sense. So to Phil, your point, I completely understand and agree with you. What is natural is, if you ever watch chimpanzees, they just rip each other's fucking limbs off, right? Or a lion, when it's upset with another lion, it will just hit it in the face with its claws. that's what I wish most people would understand. It's like that's our natural animalistic state. So for people who kind of push against me, and Phil, by the way, I'm not saying that you are pushing against me, but the people who are pushing against you who might say, hey, well, that's weird. That's not natural. It's like, yeah, well, the fact that I'm not punching you in the face right now, like that's the natural, like, resolution to this. But we've agreed as humans implicitly that we're not going to do that. So we need to have some sort of tools. And honestly, if you're not up for using those tools, to Ray, to your point, I think way more relationships are significantly more negotiable than you might think.
Hey, just real quickly, because I wanted to ask this question. I feel like this is a perfect opportunity, not to derail the conversation, but so why do you think that we're built to not want to swallow our pride? Like, to Kyle's point, why are some people so bad at it?
Oh, because it displays that you're reducing your level in the hierarchy.
It's just
I don't think it's even. Well, I think ideas are kind of like tribes. Also, when ideas are like separate tribes in your mind. When you believe an idea, you're like, no, this is, you believe it, and I would only believe it because that's right. Obviously, my ego is going to say that. I only believe things that make sense, that are correct. So if I believe this, and then I have to disagree with it, especially publicly. Like, I think most people, when they change their minds, they'll get into an interaction and then they'll like realize after thinking about it, like, oh, I was totally wrong. And they'll change their minds, but they'll try to change their minds in a way that no one really realizes. Because that's the hardest part, is like publicly, that's the hardest part for your ego.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys and what Gunther is saying as well. I personally think if you follow the chain of events, like psychologically and the hormone cascades, et cetera, it is, I am wrong. I know that I'm wrong. If I admit that I'm wrong to my peer, he now has one more point above me, and I go below him. The more I go down the list, and I could get kicked out of the tribe, but then I will die. Like, for me, every time I've dissected where my fear is from, it always comes back to I'm in some way getting kicked out of the tribe, and because humans are social creatures, I rely on that tribe for survival, and I might be kicked out tomorrow and die. Ray, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, Rob, anything like that, I think of the lizard brain kind of dominating when we can't swallow our pride. And so I just think back to what were the circumstances of our existence when that part of the brain ruled us, right? Before we had the advanced cognition of the frontal lobe. And I suppose, living in the state of nature, life was solitary, nasty, brutish, and short. And any kind of expressions of weakness meant that your status in the hierarchy and your life really were challenged, right? So I can see that and that's maybe why swallowing our pride and admitting we're wrong. We have to overcome such high walls within ourselves because it's one of those radioactive kind of instincts that is designed to protect us from getting devoured.
Oh yeah,
it's just so much better when you let it go.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever read the book *Sapiens*. It's absolutely outstanding. If I remember correctly, because I probably read it 7-8 years ago, there was a story in there of a reporter who went and hung out with a tribe for a little while, and like this was recently, let's say in the last 15-20 years, and the tribe was nomadic, so they're commuting to from one food source to another, and it was a long commute. And one of the tribesmen, kind of older guy, was falling behind. So the journalist goes to the group leader and says, hey, that guy's kind of falling behind. I want to learn, what do how do you compensate for that? And the guy looked at him and said, oh, we're going to kill him tomorrow. Yeah. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're going to kill him. So Ben, on that note, what was your comment on, I think, what was it? Boundaries?
Yeah. And it kind of ties in because I think, just real quick on the boundaries, when setting boundaries, when I'm deciding on what my boundaries are going to be, you got to look out for like your own ego getting in the way of that. Especially when we're talking about like coming to women or with your significant other. So I don't know, sometimes you'll be in an emotional state where your ego is challenged and you're like, all right, no more of this. I'm setting the boundary now, but it's not really an honest boundary. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I've kind of watched when you know what I mean?
Ben, I completely agree with you. You don't do high level calculus when like you're in rage.
No,
you don't do that. You set the boundaries in peacetime. So when you set the rules during peacetime of what the wartime rules will be, it helps it a lot better. I've learned that from
exactly. Yeah. And then as far as what we're talking about now, I'm thinking about, the other night, I don't remember, we just had a little argument, me and my fiance. And I think just as hard as maybe admitting you're right or wrong, sometimes it's a conversation. And, I'm like, God, I don't want to have this. This is such a dumb conversation that I can't believe we're having this. But to me, it's like if I just drop that and I just have the conversation, no matter what I think about it, then the problem will get kind of worked through. And maybe it's not a problem. Maybe, sometimes she just wants to have a conversation. You know what I mean? And if I think, if I'm taking 30 minutes out to have this conversation, am I being totally honest that what am I going to do in that 30 minutes? Was I just sitting on the couch scrolling through Instagram? You know what I mean? So it like challenges me to make the most out of all my time. Because if I am being productive all the time, your significant other is going to see that. And I think, then you kind of avoid, I think it all comes around. It all kind of comes full circle, I guess.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate, and I could take some lessons from you, Ben, because I have a hard time when I feel like I'm getting arrows thrown at me.
Yes.
And it's like, I can sit there and listen, but if it's like, well, hey Wes, I want you to listen how you fucking suck. And I read the book Sapiens too, and I want to murder you now. So like,
absolutely,
that's where I start to like put up the shield. But admittedly, I wonder if taking your, like, well, let me ask you, how do you react in that where it's not more of a neutral, let's say complaining or venting, it's more of like a very to the decimal precisely aimed at you sort of critique?
Well, I mean, and that happens a lot. That's actually very frequent where it'll kind of degrade into this conversation where it's kind of just things being brought up, but it's like, okay, I'm just going to listen to them and we're just going to keep talking. We're just going to keep talking because eventually, like, it's like, now I don't get entrapped into thinking, all right, I'm just going to fucking sit through this shit because I know I'm right. You can't get in that mindset, but also, like, okay, I know she doesn't really mean the things that she's saying, and objectively they're rude. And, that is an issue that's going to have to be kind of worked through over time. But I don't know, man. I don't even know if there's that clear of an answer. When I think about it, it's like a, your reflection in the water when you go up, it looks real until you touch it and it starts going away. So I don't know. I know exactly what you're saying. It's hard to sit through the insults and arrows being thrown. And I've definitely had some freakouts where it's just like, you just start stuttering and you don't know what to do. But I don't know. I just try and stick it out because when I do stick it out, it always turns out fine in the end. Where she, it's just like, well, I didn't mean the things really. And then you'll get to what her real issue is, which is usually she just, once she doesn't feel like she's getting enough affection or attention from it, typically, in my experience.
No, that makes complete sense. My girlfriend and I have implemented some pretty good boundaries around argumentation, and it's really helped. Like, hey, and we've worked with a therapist with this, and we've documented them. One of the methods that we use for conflict resolution is state the observable facts, then tell your partner the story they're telling themselves about those observable facts, then give your partner a chance to tell the story, and then come up with, okay, do we want a resolution to this, and what's the agreement moving there forward? Our therapist gave us that a while ago, and it was really good. Ray, you raised your hand, brother. What's going on? I'm sorry, Rob, you did.
Well, yeah, that's great advice, Wes. I mean, someday you're going to have like legit, like a resource center for how to deal with relationships. I feel like you've worked really hard and come a long way. But with what you were saying when you're getting spears thrown at you, in that circumstance, because I think every guy deals with this, I don't think there's any exception to this rule. If there is, it's very rare, but just kind of the human psychology of a female, I think, is do their actions speak louder than their words? Because if I know someone cares about me and they're just sounding off on me, it's like, okay, I got thick skin. They don't mean it. We can have an honest conversation maybe in 30, 45 minutes. And if I have to just sit here and take it because that's just sometimes the way it goes to be a good boyfriend, then I'll just do it. Now, I think if it's the actions don't match, if the actions match the words, it's probably time to get out.
Got it. No, I can understand that totally. If nobody else has anything else to say on this, let's move on to the next topic. The vault. The next piece that Brene Brown talks about is the vault. And what she says is, this one shook me to the core. We cannot trust someone if they share our personal information with others without our permission. It needs to be as though that information is in the vault that's only accessible to the folks we reported this to. By the same token, we need to hold the secrets, stories, and information of other people in confidence so they can trust us. Oftentimes, Brene Brown says, we use gossip as a way to try to quickly find intimacy with somebody. We feel like if we can secretly talk about others with them, we have a solid connection. But this is called counterfeit trust. If we are minding our own business and someone tells us confidential information about someone else, we know we can't trust them. Others will think the same of us. Brene Brown boils the vault down to, you respect my story and I respect other people's stories. Ray, what are your thoughts, brother?
Man, that's powerful. Yeah, I have like a very close woman in my life who just has no vault, or there's no door on her vault, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like, and the way you described that, like, gossiping is a way to create intimacy very quickly, lets me approach her with compassion that, you know what, maybe she's just trying to make a connection with her friends. But for example, this person is my wife, Sarah. And like, so whenever there's some drama between us, she immediately shotguns it to her 5 girlfriends. Right?
Yeah.
And so let's say it can be something like, and so it could be something private, like, you know, it can be something public. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just that, like, everything is going to be everything is going to be billboarded, you know, and broadcast to her 5 friends. And I don't know why, Wes, like, maybe you can help me understand why that upsets me so much. But like, obviously it's a kind of a decision-making process for her where she tells her girlfriends what I've done. They give her feedback about what a bum I am, or, you know, give Ray a break. Any guy would react that way. And then it helps her determine what her next move is going to be. I suppose that's part of that is why she does it. But it's like, no information is safe. And like, to the point where, like, I can't, like, it impairs our relationship, where it's like,
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Of course it does. Of course, like, if you're, it makes it. I'm sure if I were in your shoes, I would feel like everything I ever do or say to my wife is being judged by 6 people. It's 5 of which I'm not in an intimate relationship with. So that's insane. That's a crazy situation to be in. That's a really unfair situation to be in.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a victim or anything, don't get me wrong. I'm just like, I'm a high, and you know, it serves as a lesson for me. Next time, I think it's okay to share some. For example, we're all friends in common, and so, like, you know, so I'm friends with the husband and the wife over here, and the husband and the wife over there. And if the husband has a drinking or drug problem, but he's also the stockbroker for this group of friends,
right?
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Gossiping about his personal challenges with addiction can have ripple effects into his ability to provide for his family if that information is told to the wrong people, right? And so it's just like I feel like, and I understand the thrill of gossiping, like, oh, did you hear the latest scandal, But I guess it's the real world effects. It doesn't usually end someone's career, but it harms their feelings, right?
So
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Please go.
Sorry. No, sorry.
It's a boundaries issue.
Yeah.
You
So
can go ahead, Wes, if you want to.
all right, thanks, brother. My personal opinion on that, Ray, is, and this is nothing, not even speaking to your situation, but this is obvious. Where if you invert the question, it's like, when would it not be a problem? Like clearly, this is obviously a matter of function versus dysfunction. Not only when you distribute. Well, I guess the answer is it would not be a problem if the information is positive, but very rarely is gossip positive. So in the event that it's going to be negative, when is it not a problem? Not only is it not fair, and it puts the other person in a walking on eggshells situation because they cannot now be authentic to you as a partner, but then also, right, it just creates this extreme dysfunction because it's like, well, then I'm just not going to tell you. Just like Rob put it in the chat, that he doesn't tell a certain person things because he knows it's going to be megaphoned across the town. It's like, well, Rob is a very rational person. Then he's just not going to tell that person things about his life, obviously.
And there's going to be an intimacy gap with that person,
100%.
and that is not. Yeah.
Would you say, Rob? And then they get upset.
Yeah, well, my mother gets upset with me when I don't tell her things, and it's like, I've clearly told you why I don't, because you tell everybody. It's the first thing you do. You don't even wait.
Yeah, she, just so you know, she calls me and asks me about you. Literally, it happens probably once a quarter.
Rob, and it's like, I'm glad to hear you have a healthy mother-son dynamic. I'm going through the same thing where I'm recovering from whatever bug Wes gave me, and I was doing a puzzle this morning, right? So I was just sick of looking at my phone, and I said something like to my girlfriend, I'm like, I'm the Stephen Hawking, or like I said, puzzles and Ray, it's like effortless brilliance. And then so she texted my mom this Ray quote, effortless brilliance. Of course, my mom was like, okay, Ray's awake. Ray needs to deal with my troublesome tenants. She called me right away, right? And so so this isn't my gossiping wife, right? This is my well-meaning girlfriend. And so I said to her, I was like, look, you didn't do anything wrong. Just so you know, like, you got to be careful what you tell my mom, because if my mom knows I'm awake and I'm healthy and like I'm feeling good, well, then it's time to do mom's mom's
clause.
Yeah. And so I'm glad to hear that you also have a healthy mother-son dynamic. And Wes, I can't imagine how enmeshed and toxic your relationship with your mom is, because you guys have been it's just been the two of you the whole time.
Yeah.
You can only depend on each other. Everyone else kind of lets you down eventually. So I'm sure there's a huge kind of mom calls you for everything kind of situation, right?
Well, this is where I would love to go, really get on that bandwagon, but I got to be honest and give my mom huge shout out credit here. My mom is just an absolute beast and wonderful person, to the point where
she watches these, doesn't she?
Yeah. Extremely emotional, but I think that's also what allowed her to protect her cub, when she was when we were younger.
Of course, when
I was younger, and just my mom just does an excellent job of respecting any boundaries that I ask her to, right? And honestly, Ray, I would not have predicted that. Knowing how emotional my mother is, it seems counterintuitive for her to also have to really respect boundaries. But dude, I think she's just the number one supporter, cheerleader in my corner, and she's all in on Team West sort of thing. And I hope she hears this one day, because the amount that I respect her is just off the charts. Now we argue like Rob and his mom do, because my mom and I just think so differently. Meaning that she I feel like sometimes doesn't think like, when she picks me up at the airport, she will, when you go on the terminals, right? An airport, the road is just one way, obviously. So like she will call me when the plane's not landed yet, I don't know, 47 times. And then when I call her and the plane lands, she apparently threw her phone into the ocean. So then now we have to guess on where each other are. It's just ridiculous. So so then I'll go and she knows I'm like gonna land at like Terminal C. So what she does is she goes and parks at the end of Terminal C rather than why wouldn't you park at the beginning of Terminal C so you can see forward of like where I'm coming. So like all these little things drive me crazy. This is literally I have a declaration for my mother in my goals binder. So I have to read it every time before we interact because it reminds me of like what she did for me and how differently we think. So anyway, tangent, but Phil,
there's room for improvement there. That's good to know.
Something I just wanted to say that's like kind of the I think is really useful in the greater category of what we're talking about here is so Sam Harris wrote this book about lying. It's a very short book. It's like less than 200 pages, but like basically what he argues in that book is that a lot of people think that lying is okay, and it's really, really not okay. Lying is really, really degrading towards all your relationships and yourself. Most importantly, it degrades your own respect for yourself, and it degrades your own personal boundaries with yourself constantly if you get into the habit of lying. And he says even white lies are completely unacceptable. And this is what he says that I think is extremely clarifying and extremely interesting that I always think about. He says lying would be so much more correctly executed in society if we all treated lying like a form of violence. So violence is acceptable only when in self-defense, when you have no other option. If you cannot run away, if someone won't get away from you, then you can punch them or hit them or whatever to get out of the situation because you have no other option. And everyone accepts that. Everyone online, when they see a crazy video, they think, oh yeah, that guy totally had no other option. And everyone forgives someone when they use violence because they had no other option. And Sam basically says, we need to treat lying exactly the same way. Lying is the most mild form of violence, basically. So if you have no other option, like if someone's at your door saying, where's your children, then you lie to them if you can't. If you don't want to punch them yet, you can lie to them to get out of the situation or whatever. But lying is a form of violence, and if you're going to get into the habit of telling white lies all the time, you're destroying all your relationships because you're making it like everything you guys have been saying. Like when you gossip about other people, everyone knows that you are willing to do that. So everyone knows now I can't really trust this person anymore. I can't trust this person that I might have. And maybe they really like you, but then they realize you gossip a lot and they're like, oh, I'm not going to tell him stuff. So then that whole avenue of that relationship that's permanently poisoned. It's permanent because until they relearn that somehow they would have to change that perception of you, they're like, oh, he doesn't do this anymore and he won't ever. So now I can trust him. Like, reversing that is almost impossible. Right. So anyways, yeah, that's the whole thing. But I just think thinking of lying as a form of violence is very useful.
That was big, man. Thank you. Like I'm going to write that down in my notes. That was a really good summary.
Could I tag on to something exactly in line with what Phil just said?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there was a guy I used to see in AA meetings, and like every share he would end it with talking about like absolute truth and absolute honesty. And he would say, an exaggeration is a lie. A white lie is a lie. And I always think of it like, if you think of a big machine with two gears turning, like, and you throw chunks of metal in there, and those are the lies. I mean, a little piece of hardened steel jammed in the right place can completely stop the machine. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So a little lie is, it's like you don't know the weight that it's going to do because with it, everything comes around. So it's like a lie is a lie. Absolute honesty is like you have to exercise that in life.
The thing too is I think that's what's also the second level that's interesting about this for how this improves your own life is when you lie all the time, you're cheating your way out of situations. when someone asks you something and you tell a quote unquote white lie to get out of it, what you're doing there really is you're avoiding the difficult conversation or figuring out a way to say that tactfully. Like, so Sam talks about this in the book. He says, like, pretty much everyone, or at least an enormous amount of people in America seem to think that white lies are totally fine. And he says, like, the thing is, you don't have to tell someone the answer just because they ask you a question. He says, like, for example, like sometimes people ask me how much money I have. I'm not going to tell them, but I don't have to lie to get out of that. I can say, I don't want to tell you, like, that's the thing is, like, when you're in this habit of white lying all the time, it's like, you can think like, well, it's just so uncomfortable to say, I don't want to tell you, but there shouldn't be a reason to be uncomfortable about that. It's your money. It's your privacy. You cannot tell someone how much money you have. And it's the same way for every uncomfortable conversation. We can figure out ways to solve these problems if we stop avoiding them by lying,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and let me say this. You guys are so important to me because one of the visions that we had in creating this was almost like a man church. To be honest, I'll go to church every once in a while and I like it, but it's hard for me because I don't agree with the doctrine. So like I try to get the lessons out of it without, but when the pastor says like, okay, turn to your neighbor and say that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, I have a really hard time, like you kind of lose me in that. So, and I imagine a lot of you listening are very similar, right? But like, there's so much nuggets of wisdom in identifying successful patterns for men, and seeing you guys is very inspiring to me. From like Rob and I being in California, Ray being in Toronto, Phil, I'm not sure where you are right now, maybe San Francisco, and Ben, where you are, et cetera. But the more conversations we can have like this as men of, hey, not talking about how the Super Bowl went, but hey, what are the successful patterns that we've all learned, and what have we failed at, and what do we won at? I literally think we can. I hate saying this, but like make it a better space for our families and for ourselves. So I appreciate you guys being here. Anyway,
can I ask you one question, Wes? Yeah, it's really more of a question. I hope you can answer it quickly. But for instance, when you have someone that's being misunderstood and you understand that person than everybody else, and you want to bridge that gap, and there's a situation where you know more about this person and it's not your story to tell, because I respect that vault, what do you do to bridge that gap by that misunderstanding where people are like, hey, this guy's a dick, and it's like, no, man, this guy's hurting. Like, is there anything you can do to help bridge that gap?
So
without exposing?
Would you mind giving more of a context? Because I do think the context is important.
Let's say there's somebody that is really upset and sad that there's a friend that feels distant, but that friend also feels like, hey, this guy's distant, and like they're fighting over nothing per se. How is it within our responsibility, someone that cares, to help bridge that gap maybe? Or how without telling too much?
So, okay. So are you saying like two friends have some sort of either disagreement or distance between them, and you feel like you can mend the relationship, but they're not necessarily willing to at this particular moment?
Well, let's just say person A told you something in confidence and you're respecting that vault. And then person B tells you something in confidence and you're respecting that vault. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. There's something here because I know both sides of the story. Does that make sense? I know this person. And like the reality is this can be mended or this can be bridged.
Yeah. And Kyle is saying he can help answer this question. Kyle, I don't know if you want to come up. I'm going to invite you up here. My personal take on it, and then I might have to jump on I'll leave you guys on, but I might have to jump on a meeting. If it were me, Rob, not that this is saying this is the right answer, but if it were me, I would almost say what you just said. Like, hey man, I can't tell you certain things about this certain person, but as a friend, and I'm going to tell this person the same thing, right? I feel like there's something that needs to be worked out, and I know that it can be worked out, as my personal opinion. Are you open to it? So like, I feel like there's a way of protecting certain details and doing your job as a friend, in my view, of trying to help your friends, mend whatever. Is that, given the vagueness of the context, I think, is that a reasonable answer?
That makes sense. I mean, I guess I wish I had a more specific example, but sometimes I feel like there are people that are misunderstood because they're not being honest with other people, but you know the truth. And it's like you're torn because you want to tell these other people how they're feeling and what they're going through, but you can't because this person told you that in confidence.
Oh, dude. Well, I will tell you this. I've had some really good, I I read, what was it? Ray Dalio talked about radical candor. I've had some really good radical candor interventions with friends, giving them proper disclaimers saying, hey, we're going to go to this offsite location. We're going to have some really weird fucking conversations between you, me, and this other person and this other person. And it's going to be a straight workshop. Are you cool with that? And it's going to be fucking weird. But I think, Rob, this where it goes back into the emotional bank account that you build up with having very direct conversations like that, assuming you have the rapport right in your friend group where they know that you could lead it, I think can actually be incredibly valuable. I've done it with couples too. Yeah. So I would say and I think you have enough judgment to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing.
Anyway, dude, absolutely. I love you, dudes. We'll go through the remainder of Brene Brown's braving acronym for trust. We'll do it on Monday. Anyway, you guys.